Wait a minute. Sorry.
Jeff Zilke from the city of Birmingham, here to present case.
Mr. Zilke, hold on. I forgot one thing. We got the minutes. Board members, if you have before you the April 14th meeting, minutes of that meeting, are there any corrections? Okay, I have one correction, and it's at the bottom of page 3, the spelling of my last name. But other than that, no other corrections.
Motion to approve minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes with the one change. Call the roll, please.
Eric Morganroth,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Lilly,
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ron Reddy,
Yes.
Jason Canvasser.
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to call 412 Willits Appeal 2021.
Jeff Zilke with the city of Birmingham, presenting case 20-21. Property known as 412 Willits requests the following variances to construct an addition to the existing non-conforming home. Variance A, Chapter 126, Article 2, Section 2.08.2 of the zoning ordinance requires that a minimum total side yard setbacks are 14 feet or 25% of whichever is greater. The required total is 15 feet. The existing and proposed is 10.82 feet. Therefore, a variance of 4.18 feet is being requested. Variance B, Chapter 126, Article 4, Section 4.74C of the zoning ordinance requires a minimum distance between principal residential buildings on adjacent lots of 14 feet or 25% of the total lot width, whichever is larger. The required distance is 15 feet. The proposed is 11.02 feet. Therefore, a variance of 3.98 feet is being requested on the east side. The applicant is requesting to construct this addition to their existing 1865 historic home, which has been in front of the historic district a couple of times, but the final layout and design was approved back in February. And if you look at the site plan, the total distance side yard setbacks are falling short of the 15 feet. Therefore, the variance A of the request of 4.18 feet is being requested. And if you look at the variance B, the distance between structures 11.02 feet, which is required to be 15 feet. So the variance of 3.98 feet is being requested on the east side. Anybody have any questions?
Yes, on the east side. Is this addition within the existing plane of the house?
The addition in the front, on the east side, no, they're actually expanding the addition on the east side that is going over the existing setback.
So how can the existing and proposed total setback be the same?
I'm going to say I misspoke on that. It's not the existing. What they're proposing is the 4.18 feet for the distance for the total side yards.
Okay, so without this addition right now, they have the 15 feet. They meet the 15 feet required setbacks.
I believe yes. They are right at the 15 feet.
Without the addition, then the they meet on B, they meet the total distance between buildings.
They meet the total side yard setbacks. They would also meet the distance between structures. Because it's set well within that area from the addition. They can come out a little bit further, but with the addition of the 4.818 feet addition outside these setbacks, that's they need a little bit where they can make it in the setbacks. Right now, it meets the setbacks.
Okay. Without the addition.
Without the addition, correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Morganroth.
Mr. Zilke, if they didn't have the hallway that leads to the new master suite and that powder room and closet were pulled in, would those two pieces of the structure need a variance?
I'm not 100% sure how they came up with the design.
You see what I'm saying, though?
Right, the hallway cut in the back of the bathroom, it would limit the closet on the front portion of it.
Because of the mechanical room.
Correct.
I'm just wondering if could they build a hallway from the dining room or another space? I'm just trying to figure out if there's a version of this that would work, notwithstanding the existing wood deck or blocking the bedroom windows. I just don't. I'm trying to figure out if this is all doable without such grand variance. And also, my next question is the adjacent house conforming?
The adjacent house to the east?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that adjacent is a duplex. It's, I want to say it's R4. And to know the exact dimension, and I know they're not not tighter than the 5 feet. So I'd say that would conform at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zilke, is there space behind the house to add on?
I believe it goes down towards the creek. I know the appellant can speak to it. I know it'd be a little difficult, doable, but I think it would be a little bit difficult.
Okay.
They do have some area going back to the 30-foot rear setback.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Zilke? Okay, Mr. Lilly.
In the notes that came with the packet, they were talking about there's a solarium to the east on that duplex. And that was an addition that was done a number of years ago, but I can't find it right at the top of my list here. But that is a non-conforming dimensional issue with their request for the addition, that if that addition wasn't there, they wouldn't need that variance.
On the structure to the east, if that was not there, then they would not need that variance. They would meet the 5 foot, but they'd still be falling short on the total side yard setbacks combined.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Zilke? Okay, who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
Hi, this is John Stein, and I own 412 Willis. And this is my wife, Lauren Stein.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead and make your presentation.
Sure. Happy to. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing the presentation. Lauren and I have lived here at 412 Willets for 9 years at this point, and the house was built sometime around 1860. And so due to the advanced age of the home, not only does it predate all of the existing building codes in Birmingham, but it actually predates the existence of Birmingham as a village. It's one of the oldest structures in the city. And we really love this home. I think I'd like to start our presentation by stating that this is an exceptional place to live, and we really love this house. We love where it's located downtown. And one of the things that we found over time is that it is becoming extremely challenging in certain respects to live in this house. Because it is right on the border with downtown, you know, we're seeing heavy construction across the street. So the new Surnow building, the Jeffrey, is going up across the street. That's been a 2-year construction project. And I think you might have seen in the letter that we sent with our packet, in normal times, not in pandemic times, many cars go in front of our house every day down Willett Street, sometimes more than 3,000 a day. So it's a home that's very much in the city, and the city has grown up around it. And what we're trying to do now is take the steps that will make this home livable, not just for us in the present, but for future generations that we would hope would keep it viable for another 150 years. It's a small house. It's between 15 and 1,600 square feet as it sits right now. And for some of the questions that the board was asking in your discussion, we really are not able to build back because the existing structure does not support a vertical addition, and we can't build it without changing the historic structure of the house, which is something that we're required to maintain according to the current city historic district requirements. So the addition that you see presented to you is our best attempt to build a structure that will keep this home, the integrity of the historic designation, as well as providing us a little bit more livable space in the home. And the best way that we found to do that from a cost standpoint, from a feasibility standpoint, was to build a smallish master bedroom addition on the side. There are a number of hardship conditions that exist in this home in addition to the, call it the streetscape out front. As we noted in the letter, there are a number of pre-building code conditions that exist in the house. So, for example, we have a stairway that leads up to the current master bedroom that is narrower than anything that would be allowed under the current code. And so future mobility concerns definitely come into play when we think about who will live in that home or in that space in future decades. And so there are just a number of things that we outlined in the letter that explain why it is that we think that this is the right addition at this time, even with the variances.
Okay. Can you go into a little more detail why you can't build on the back of the house?
Happy to. There is an existing addition that dates to about 1980-81 on the back of the house. So the way the house is laid out right now, we have the existing historic structure that dates to the 1860s that consists of the den that we're in right now, a living room adjacent to it, and then the master bed and bath upstairs. Behind us is a kitchen, and there's an addition from 1980 that has a single story. And that addition has a sloping roof, and it was never designed to have an addition added onto it. So structurally, our builder has told us that it is not possible to add on to the existing addition and to go up. And if we went out further, we would have lot coverage issues. That's my understanding of it. I would defer to my architect and the builder on the specifics of the lot coverage requirement.
Okay. I guess I'd like to know why you have a lot coverage issue, because in looking at drawing here.
Hey, Chuck, when you turn your head, they can't.
Yeah, I know. I got to pull it over here. Sorry. Yeah. There. The drawings show the building envelope, and you've got, there's no dimension, but you got a huge, it says existing brick patio. You got a huge area that goes back before you even get to the 30-foot setback. So it seems like you got a lot of room in the back to expand this house.
Yeah, I would probably have to defer to our architect, Brian Nieper, who's on the call right now, in terms of what is permissible in terms of the building space. What I can speak to as a homeowner is that the two conditions that exist right now in the back are that the addition that exists currently is not suitable to build on top of, and also that the home itself, the lot, is a hill that slopes back, and so that there might be some considerations when it comes to building backward that make it more difficult. The other issue is that with the existing side yards being so narrow, it's extremely difficult to get the kind of construction machinery into the backyard that we would need to be able to build an addition in the back.
All right. So is the brick patio area level with the back, with it, or does it slope away from the house?
It's actually terraced on a slope. So you have the patio, and then you have a hill and a slope behind it that lead down to the back of the yard.
All right. Mr. Nieper, you want to talk about the issues on the back?
Yeah, be happy to. One of the difficulties that we have on the rear of the home is a very shallow shed roof that projects from the historic structure to the rear. So in order to be able to allow water to come off that roof, it'd be very difficult to build anything behind it because it's so shallow. Also, there's existing deck and existing access to the rear yard from the existing home. We really don't want to block in the existing home completely by building behind it. And also, just the grading in the back is a very large topographical fall from the home down to the river behind. So it's just a very difficult position to build into.
All right, Mr. Morgenroth, you got a question?
Yeah, for Mr. Nieper, a couple questions. So one, there really shouldn't be a lot coverage issue because whatever this first floor master bedroom and closet square footage is being generated on the main floor, that would be similar lot coverage on the rear yard. Is that correct, Mr. Nieper?
Yeah, there is no lot coverage issue.
And then is there a reason why you couldn't, and I'm asking from the perspective that I don't know all the historical issues, is there a reason why, since there's already a bedroom on the first floor, you couldn't utilize that space and then build off of that for the master and the master bath?
Well, we're trying to also accommodate for a guest bedroom floor as well.
Right. And I noticed that you stopped one of the walls for the master closet to maintain the window in the full bath on the first floor. And you've also stopped the master suite expansion to protect the windows in the bedroom. So you're working around the existing structure probably for cost feasibility, but that doesn't mean that inserting the structure you've designed further into the footprint by utilizing the bedroom space isn't feasible. Isn't that correct?
I think we've come up with the best solution, both feasibility for the topography and for the connection to the existing structure.
But the back of that master is sitting, how high off the first floor is that master suite going to sit off the ground based on the lot drop in the back?
I believe by the time you get to the back, it's 4 or 5 feet. It starts to...
Right, so you're already accommodating the grade with a 5-foot distance from grade to the first floor of that bedroom, correct?
Yeah, roughly. But just the further back we go, the further it drops. So. Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner or their architect?
I have a question for the petitioner.
Sure. Sir, Mr. Morgenroth.
Trying to pull him on my screen. 1 second. Hi, Mr. Stein. So I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish here, and you can kind of hear what my questions are, which is, I understand there's a challenging lot, and you have obviously a special home that's historic and creates special challenges, but what you're really trying to do is maintain a bedroom while adding a full master suite. Many homes in Birmingham don't have that feasibility of improving or expanding the first floor footprint because of setbacks, and it does appear you have a lot of vacant building envelope and even the ability to maybe use the space where the current bedroom is to do exactly what you show. And if you shifted that entire structure, that full rectangle to where the existing bedroom is, it would be completely like that, although you would lose the square footage of the bedroom, but you would end up achieving it without a variance. So we have to look at what the hardship is. The hardship is I can't use the lot, or I can't do with the lot what I want to do because there's challenges, and explain to me why you don't feel like you could do a full master suite with a nice sized bathroom, maybe even bigger than what you show there, if you utilize the backyard and the existing bedroom space.
Well, I think that there are probably a number of distinct reasons that we felt that building in the space that we selected was the right place to build. One was the topography. Two is the condition of the existing addition that makes it tough to add on to that existing addition. Three was that we have a privacy issue on the east side of the house that the layout of this bedroom would address, which is the atrium from our neighbor's home. The intent would be to create a buffer between the atrium, which is used daily by that owner and their guests, where they're, currently staring directly into our family room. We'd like to be able to create an attractive buffer to correct for that situation. We have the historic designation of the home, which doesn't allow us to change anything at all that faces the street or is visible from the street. So there are a number of different conditions. The backyard, without bringing you all into the backyard to see it, is a challenging place to build because the slope is quite severe, and actually, it goes behind our house. It descends down to Warren Court and then down to the Rouge River, and so the slope is pretty level at the front because it's facing the street, but the drop off is pretty significant by the time you get to the back of the house. So the challenges of building back there, the structure would have to be elevated considerably from where the front or the current addition is. And it's just, a more difficult place to build. You'd probably also have things like really long hallways and things like that if you were to build, in the back of the house right now. So that's the basis of our decision to place the addition on the east side is rooted in a number of different challenges that exist specifically with this home. It's worth noting too that because of the age of the house, it was never, I guess I would say when this house was built, it was in a pasture, right? And there were very few neighbors. And, it was probably never envisioned that you could be in a situation where across the street, you could be zoned for a 4+ story building and that you could have neighbors less than 10 feet away with an atrium that looks into the home. So it's just, we're trying to bring it up to date and make it livable for the future. The other issue too is that, it might not come across in the plans, but this is a small home. It's about 1,500 square feet total. It was marketed as a 3-bedroom home, but realistically it's 2 and a den. And so we're trying to create some livable space in this house for the future.
Right. You said a couple of things. For historic reasons, you're trying to keep the front of the house the way it is. But it seems to me by building out to the side, if I'm coming straight down the street, I'm looking at this house and all of a sudden there's this bump out that sort of destroys the historic front, even though it's not right at the front, it's back further. And then your other argument was that you want this privacy from the atrium, but if you move the bedroom back further and behind the house, you still got that screening that you want.
Yeah, I think we've tried to be very, very sensitive to the historic nature of the home. And, I would say for both Lauren and for myself, we're very passionate about the preservation of this house. And that everything that we've envisioned is done within the guidelines for sympathetic restoration and preservation. And so what you'll see is a structure that complements the existing home. It doesn't distract from the existing home.
Okay. Anybody else have any? Mr. Canvasser?
Yeah, I understand your desire and your thought process going into this, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But the problem I'm having here is that we have to look at one of the things we have to look at is whether or not this is self-created. This house has existed since 1860, obviously with some modifications. But what is it about this addition that makes it not self-created? What is, in other words, what is it that what is the reason you must have this addition?
Well, I think for starters, when we purchased the home 9 years ago, across the street from us was the Christian Scientist Church. It was actually zoned residential. And the city of Birmingham has rezoned that parcel across the street to allow for office redevelopment. And so our bedroom it's actually right above our current location and it faces the street. It's right on the sidewalk. And in addition to being a 2-year construction project going on right outside our window, we're going to have when the pandemic is over, a lot of commuters going by every day, and we're going to have increased traffic from the office building. And so what we're trying to do, we would definitely view that as not a situation of our making, a rezoning and a redevelopment into an office building. We're trying to move our main living space toward the side and the back of the house to get away from an increase in street traffic that's already thousands of cars and lots of people every day. So that's the primary motivation, is to create livability. So I would say that I understand that in buying this home, we recognize that we would live in a downtown environment, and that was always part of the deal. But the city itself is changing the rules around what's allowed from a development standpoint, and that's absolutely impacting our quality of life and potentially our property value if we can't build a future resident, call it a secluded space away from all the noise and the traffic.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner? All right. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this appeal? If there is, then as I said, we want you to state your name and address for the record and indicate whether you're in favor or opposed and why. Okay. All right. Apparently there is no one. So we're going to close public comment. Does someone want to make a motion? Mr. Reddy.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion with regards to appeal number 20-21, the property known as 412 Willett. I would make a motion to grant the variance for both A and B based on what Mr. Stein said and what Mr. Napier said with regards to this being a 1860 building, the rezoning issue across the street, a narrow lot that's going to present some problems. This is actually a very unique circumstances in my understanding of why a dimensional variance would be granted, just based on the age of the structure, the lot size, what they're trying to do to maintain some livability in a relatively small structure. So I would make a motion to approve the two variances.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to grant the variances as advertised. Any discussion? Well, Mr. Morganroth.
Yes, I won't support the motion, although I do believe the petitioner has the right to modify this home. I don't see a challenge in creating what they want to create unless I'm missing something from the historical standpoint where they couldn't take this large rectangle that represents the addition and shift it where the existing bedroom is, although it would interfere with a wood deck. That's just part of remodeling. And since the house is already sitting 4 or 5 feet off the grade in the back, the grade is going to be an issue in either scenario. But I just don't see why we should grant a variance into the side yard setback, which is going to cause challenges for future construction where we're granting variances that don't appear to be necessary, and this appears to be self-created for me. So for that reason, I can't support the motion.
Okay, Mr. Canvasser.
I'm not going to support the motion either. I mean, in addition to what Mr. Morganroth said, I think this is a self-created issue. I had not heard anything of why, why they can't add an addition some other way, or, why there isn't a strict need to have an addition in the first place. I mean, this home has been around since 1860, albeit with some modifications, but to me, this is just a self-created issue, and so we have to deny it.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Mr. Lilly.
Just to kind of flesh out my second to Mr. Reddy's motion. I walked by the property over the weekend. I've read the letter. I've looked at the drawings, and I just think they're trying to adhere as best they can to the historic guidelines with a minimum size of the addition so as not to overwhelm the house or the neighborhood. And I guess I support that because I think it will make that house a lot more livable for both the current owners and future owners, without going in and modifying the whole backyard and trying to attach the addition to apparently an existing structure that may not support it properly.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, this is a difficult one for me. Always it comes down to assessing if it's self-created, which in this case, I do think it is. I haven't really heard why an alternative can't be done, although I do appreciate, what the petitioner's been attempting to do here, especially considering, the Surnow building being rezoned and that it is something that they didn't anticipate. But, at the end of the day, I'm having trouble getting past the self-created prong, so that's why I can't support.
Okay, I'm not going to support the motion either for the reasons stated by Mr. Canvasser and Mr. Morganroth. I just don't think they've shown a practical difficulty, and I think they can accomplish this. While they may not want to, I think they can accomplish what they want by adding on to the back. Okay, the motion is to grant the variances as advertised. Call the roll, please.
Ron Reddy,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Lilly,
No.
Eric Morganroth,
No.
Francis Rodriguez,
No.
Jason Canvasser.
No.
Okay. So now the requested variance is denied. All right. Calling 501 South Eaton, appeal number 2022.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, I can.
All right. I'm Brooks Cowan with the City of Birmingham, presenting appeal number 20-22. The owner of the property, known as 501 South Eaton, requests the following dimensional variance regarding parking requirements in the MX zone. Chapter 126, Article 4, Section 4.46A states that off-street parking spaces are required based on land use or land uses for the site, that the number of spaces required per land use is detailed in Table A. Article 4, Table A requires eating establishments with combined indoor-outdoor consumption to provide one parking space for each 75 square feet of floor area and one parking space per 300 square feet of commercial, office, or retail use. The subject property currently has a total of 21 parking spaces. 13 spaces are located on site, while an additional 8 spaces are in the public right-of-way. The whistle stop currently occupies one of 3 tenant spaces in the subject building, and the other 2 spaces are currently vacant. Whistle Stop requires 20 parking spaces as an eating establishment. This requirement leaves 1 remaining parking space for the 2 vacant tenant spaces on the southern portion of the building. The applicant is proposing to combine 2 tenant spaces and expand Whistle Stop into 2,554 square feet of restaurant use. Doing so would require 34 parking spaces for the eating establishment. The remaining tenant space is proposed to be used as retail, which would require an additional 4 parking spaces. Based on the sizes of the 2 proposed uses, a total of 38 parking spaces would be required for the proposal. Therefore, the applicant has requested a dimensional variance of 17 parking spaces. And for some background on the property, the subject building was built in 1968 and was zoned industrial at the time, which permitted all business uses as well. And new businesses built within the industrial zone were required to provide 2 parking spaces for up to 2,000 square feet of building area, and then 1 additional square foot of parking for every 1 square foot of building area over 2,000 square feet. So in 1968, when this 3,729 square foot building was built, they were required to provide 2 parking spaces plus an additional 1,729 square feet of parking and this equates to 12 spaces required back then. And this is what we currently see located on site today. And the restaurant Whistle Stop has occupied this building since 1968. At that time, the parking requirements, the building, and the restaurant use satisfied all zoning ordinance requirements at that time. It was in 1974 that the city amended its zoning ordinance to require eating establishments to provide one parking space per 75 square feet, and created the legal non-conforming issue for this site ever since. The applicant appeared before the planning board on January 22nd, 2020. The planning board expressed their support for the project, and they motioned to approve the final site plan and design review with the condition that the applicant satisfy parking requirements through either a shared parking agreement or by obtaining a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Bruce, if you could flip to the proposed site plan, here we are. So if you look closely, the dotted line going through the yellow area indicates how this building is demised at the moment, with the Whistle Stop being on the most furthest left part. The applicant is proposing to expand into that middle tenant space as well, which has increased their parking requirements. And with that, I leave it to the board for any questions.
All right. Isn't the Whistle Stop already using that second space for the real materials they gave us? It looks like they're using it as their bakery. So is the bakery completely separate from the restaurant, or are they baking food, making baked goods for the restaurant?
I believe the applicant can attest to what that middle space is being used for at this moment. From our understanding, that middle space is vacant and not included in the use.
Okay. What's the seating capacity right now, the Whistle Stop?
The Whistle Stop currently has 55 seats.
Okay. And then if they get their variance and they make this change, how many seats are they going to have then?
From my understanding, if you count the booths as 6-seaters, that they would have 86 seats indoor and 26 seats outdoor. I just wanted to clarify that the zoning ordinance or parking requirements is based on the square footage of the use and not on the number of seats within the space.
All right, so they got 55 right now that they can handle in that restaurant, and then if they got the variance inside, they can handle up to another 31. Did I understand you correctly? It's 86. Correct. 86 is the indoor capacity.
Correct.
And then there's an outdoor capacity besides.
They've proposed 26 outdoor seats, but the zoning ordinance does not consider outdoor seating within parking requirement. Or
okay, but it does cause traffic problems. Alrighty. Any other? Yes, Mr. Canvasser.
Yeah. What is the on-street parking situation? Because we have. I mean, do you know how many? Are there meters?
There are no meters, and the applicant was approved for 8 on-street spaces in 2007. I believe.
When you say 8 on-street spaces, are they dedicated for Whistle Stop? Do they have signage?
They're not dedicated for Whistle Stop. Anyone may use them. Anyone going to any spaces within the rail district or the residential spaces. Those on-street spaces are for anyone to use, but the applicant is allowed to count them towards their parking requirements for uses.
Are the other establishments over there, like Griffin Claw, or any others, considered? Are they using those on-street spaces as part of their parking?
Not that I'm aware of. When Griffin Claw was built, I believe they were held to provide all parking spaces required.
And then one more question. Do you know if the master plan that's being proposed addresses the parking in that area? Is there a deck or anything else proposed in that area?
I know that the master plan being proposed was discussing how the rail district is a little bit different area than what's going on downtown, and then there's a lot of cool old buildings, and that the zoning ordinance should be queued to kind of coordinate some of the older industrial buildings with the new buildings being built within the MX. I also know that as an all-encompassing plan for the master plan, that it's recommending multimodal board, work on different transportation methods, and there's been discussion about what side of the street the bike lane should be on. So if it was discussed, if a bike lane was moved to the east side of Eaton, this applicant would lose 3 parking spaces.
But wouldn't they pick it up on the opposite side of the street then?
No, under our current ordinance requirements, you're only allowed to ask permission to count on-street parking spaces if it's on your side of the street. If parking space is on the opposite side of the street, you're not allowed to ask for them.
All right. So if they lost 3 spaces, now it's even worse.
Correct.
They would need a variance of 20.
Correct.
Over 50% of what the ordinance requires.
Correct. And losing those 3 spaces would also move Whistle Stop into another nonconformance for parking.
Okay. Mr. Morgan-Roth?
Couple, maybe 3 questions. First question is, are they going to require a variance to have the outside street or the outside parking or seating, or is that already something approved?
That's already something approved. They would have to get an outdoor dining permit from the city, but the planning board approved of the site plan.
Since square footage doesn't take into consideration outside seating, outside tables, which clearly generates traffic, is there another method that we use in Birmingham or another adjacent city you're aware of that uses number of tables or number of occupants as a calculation of parking?
Not that I'm aware of. I just know that in Table A of the parking requirements, it says excluding all area utilized for outdoor dining, because it's seasonal. So you don't know how long it'll be out there.
Well, even with maybe potential rules to only allow 50% capacity right now, they temporarily won't be able to fill the restaurant anyway. So there's a lot of unknowns, but we're talking about long-term if we approve a variance. What about congestion in the area in general? Do you know if this particular applicant has attempted to do any kind of shared parking agreement to get the rest of the spots?
Yes. During the planning board meeting on January 22nd, the applicant discussed how they have a bit of an informal agreement with Griffin Claw next door, and how they don't file complaints on one another parking on each other's properties. And during the application with the planning board, the applicant had spoke to, they were working on an agreement or trying to get one through with Griffin Claw next door, and they were trying to finalize a shared parking agreement. And so, yeah, I know that the applicant should be able to speak further as to, what has happened in terms of trying to go forward with a shared parking agreement. I do know that during the planning board meeting, Norm LePage, the owner of Griffin Claw, submitted a letter in support of this project and moving forward with the Whistle Stop expansion.
Does Griffin Claw have excess spots to share, or how does that work in terms of the zoning requirement?
So Whistle Stop is open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then Griffin Claw is open, I believe, Monday through Thursday. They open at 2 p.m. to 12, and then Fridays they'll open at 12. So there's not much overlap. And so if the applicant is able to prove that there's a time gap where nobody's using this parking in the morning, but we can use it, there's a time interval where the planning department and planning board are permitted to sign off on that. There's also certain percentage requirements. So Griffin Claw would always be required to meet their parking requirements, and that excess could be applied. And so there are a number of ways. I believe this one would be through the time gap, in that nobody's using Griffin Claw as parking spaces. I think they have over 50 during the time the Whistle Stop is open. And that would be the reason the planning department or board would be able to possibly approve it.
Thank you.
Mr. Lilly?
Is there street parking allowed on either Hazel or Palmer on either side of the restaurant? Or is the approved parking just on Eaton?
There is approved street parking on the Hazel side. They have 2 spaces there. And then on Palmer, they have 3 spaces adjacent to the building there. So 3 are on Eaton, 3 on Palmer, 2 on Hazel.
Okay, so Palmer and Hazel are part of that 8 off-site parking count.
Correct.
All right, any other questions from Mr. Cohen? Yes, Mr. Reddy.
A quick question. Is the residential area to the west, is that permit parking over there, or is that parking on the street just in general allowed like everywhere else?
On the west side, it varies. I believe around the apartments, it's permit parking. I do not have the map in front of me. I know that a certain number of streets there do require residential permits, whereas others do not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before I get to Mr. Canvasser, I want to talk on this permit parking. While there may not be any right across the street now, the neighbors could get, if it got bad, the neighbors could get together and petition to have a permit parking, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Canvasser?
Yeah, so just to be clear, in the eyes of the city, they can either get into a shared parking agreement or obtain a variance, correct?
Correct.
And I mean, this will be a question, I guess, for the applicants, so the applicant can start thinking about it. But, you know, in the eyes of the city, at least, they have not exhausted or proven that they cannot enter into that shared parking agreement, correct?
It was my understanding that they were working on a shared parking agreement during their planning board application. I believe the applicant would be able to speak further as to what has occurred since then.
Yeah. I mean, just speaking out loud, I wonder if this hearing is premature until we know the answer to that question.
From what I hear is they were not able to achieve or obtain one, but I wanted to defer to the applicant on, you know, how that occurred.
Well, let's see what the applicant has to say. But you raised a good point. Any other questions for Mr. Cohen? All righty, who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
Jerry Pesic. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. This is Jerry Pesic. I'm an attorney representing the petitioner. I'm located at 380 North Old Woodward in Birmingham, Michigan. Also present in the meeting are the petitioners, Walter and Elda Jomaki, as well as the project architect, Jawan Maddy, who's here to assist with any questions that may come up. Can I ask, can you see me?
No.
I'm trying.
We see the floor.
Huh. Let me try and fix it if I may.
Let me see your hand.
Yeah.
Getting closer.
You probably have to flip.
Or it's either the floor on top of a desk.
Flip the
On
camera.
top of a desk.
You probably have to flip the camera. It's
Yeah, let me try and
front
flip
versus
the
rear.
camera, which
Should be on the front, top right, maybe.
well, I'm looking at more. I'm calling in my wife who can assist me. Sorry.
Phoning in a friend.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. All right, now I got you.
All right, I feel better now. As indicated, the planning board reviewed and approved this project 7-0 back in January of this year. I want to, first of all, point out that the project and the variance requested are consistent with the intent of the MX zone, which this property is located in. And that intent is to encourage the retention, improvement, and expansion of existing uses that help define the Eaton Road corridor. The building that's located on the property consists of just over 3,700 square feet. The diner, which is at the north end of the property, currently contains 1,454 square feet. The kitchen in particular is very small, and the seating areas for the patrons are also very small and very cramped. Adjacent to the diner to the south, as was discussed, and separated by a wall, is a space that was previously used and owned as I believe, an ice cream and dessert parlor. A portion of it is currently being used for baking bread and pastry for use by the diner. Adjacent to the diner to the south, excuse me, that's a 1,600 square foot unit. And adjacent to the bakery to the south is an 1,175 square foot retail space, which was most recently leased to a yoga studio. The project the petitioner is undertaking will combine and redesign the diner and the bakery spaces to create a larger and safer kitchen, first and foremost. It'll include a larger cooler for employees to use, and it'll enlarge the restrooms. It will also make the dining area roomier and more comfortable in terms of seating for the patrons. And all of these improvements, as well as including the restrooms, will now become ADA compliant as a result of these upgrades. Upon completion, the diner itself will be 2,550 square feet. And the proposed layout was just shown. It's on drawing A-100. One of the things I'd like to point out is that the diner itself is, the seating area of the diner is only going to increase by about 300 square feet. The reason the opportunity for additional seating is there is due to the reconfiguration and removal of the wall between the two spaces. The property's been operating. I think another important point that needs to be made is that the redesign that we're talking about can all be accomplished without changing the footprint of the building. Okay, this property's been operating for decades with a total of 21 parking spaces or less. Currently has 13 on site and 8 adjacent street spaces, as was discussed. Those spaces are along Eaton, Hazel, and Palmer, and were authorized by the city in 2007. It's also, I think, very important to note that a large percentage of the diner's customers live in the neighborhood and walk to the property, particularly in the summertime. The owner has indicated to me that probably in excess of half of the customers during the summertime walk to the property from the neighborhood. Also, there's mitigating factors here in terms of the reduced parking. Number one, there was some discussion a moment ago about the reciprocal parking agreement, and I'd like to reference that. Currently, there is an informal reciprocal parking agreement with the Griffin Claw. And my understanding with regard to the issue of whether or not that has been exhausted, the property owner and Mr. LePage, I believe prior to the zoning board hearing, were on the brink of entering into a formal reciprocal parking agreement. I think when it was drafted, the language was approved. Unfortunately, apparently due to the untimely death of Mr. LePage's partner, without going into detail, he had indicated that he was not in a position to go forward with the formal parking agreement at that time, and my understanding is still not in a position to do so. However, the informal agreement has been in place. It's working very well because of the different times of operations of the two properties. And Mr. LePage has indicated that he's very supportive of the request for variance in this particular situation. And as you know, Mr. LePage, in addition to owning the Griffin Claw, is also the owner of the Big Rock. So he has obviously a substantial investment in the area. As mentioned, the current requirements of the MX zone call for a total of 38 spaces, 34 for the diner and 4 for the retail space. And therefore we're seeking, as mentioned, a 17 parking space dimensional variance. On its face, we understand it sounds like a big ask, but we believe the mitigating factors as well as the circumstances that the diner is in will more than justify the granting of the variance. Unfortunately, when we talk about those circumstances, due to the shape and location of the building, there's simply no room for additional on-site parking. And due to the nature and location of the site itself and the surrounding area, there is no way to expand the site. If the off-street parking requirements are strictly enforced, it's going to create a practical difficulty and undue hardship, for that matter, on the petitioner, which cannot be cured on the site. I think it's very important for this board, in considering the petitioner's request, to take into account the previously mentioned intent of the MX zone to encourage the retention, improvement, and expansion of existing uses in the corridor, and also that it considered that flexibility is an important part of the overriding intent of the overlay district. With that in mind, I'd like to briefly review the factors in Article 8.01 F3A of the ordinance that the board is to consider in making a determination on the variance request. The first factor is due to special conditions applicable to the subject property. The provisions of the ordinance, if strictly applied, would unreasonably prevent the petitioner from enhancing the property for its permitted use. The Eaton Street Corridor Plan, going back to 1999, has recognized the whistle stop for its service to the immediate neighborhood and for its pedestrian-friendly atmosphere. It's candidly exactly the type of ability the ordinance is speaking to when it calls for encouragement and flexibility towards retention and improvement of existing uses in the corridor. The second factor, literal enforcement of the ordinance, will result in practical difficulty and unnecessary hardship. If the parking requirements, again, are literally applied, it will likely preclude the diner from redesigning and upgrading its interior space and bringing it into ADA compliance. Third factor, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the spirit and purpose of the zoning ordinance, nor contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare. The proposed improvements are within the ordinance's spirit and intent to encourage continuation and enhancement of current uses. And the improvements will make the diner safer and more comfortable for employees and patrons. The fourth factor, the granting of the variance will result in substantial justice to the property owners, the owners of the property in the area, and the general public. Again, granting the variance is going to allow the owner to improve and enhance its current use of the property despite the limitations of the site, and it will create a safer and more comfortable environment for employees and the public in a manner that's consistent with the applicable ordinances. Finally, I think it's very important to note that the practical difficulty and hardship here are clearly not self-created. They're present because of the existing size, shape, and other features of the property and the building, and also because of the surrounding development in the area. The property has been used as a diner and other retail uses for decades, and when it's said and done, it's important to note the footprint of the building is not going to change. For all these reasons and the additional reasons that are set forth in my March 23rd, 2000 letter to this board, we respectfully request on the behalf of the petitioners that the petitioner be granted a 17-space dimensional parking variance.
Okay, I think Mr. Canvasser hit the nail on the head. I think your request for a variance is premature. You've indicated you're negotiating it, and there's the possibility you work out an agreement and you won't need any variances. And even if you work out an agreement, you may still need a variance, but not to the number you want right now. So I throw this out to you. We can either go ahead and vote on this tonight, or you can table it to see whether you can work out an agreement with Griffin Claw.
And I appreciate Mr. Canvasser's question. It's the same question I would ask if I was sitting in his shoes. I can tell you that there have been substantial discussions with Mr. LePage. At this point, he has not indicated he's not in a position to go forward. We are happy to continue, attempt to take one more shot at that and continue that discussion with him based upon the recommendation, what I perceive as a recommendation of the board, come back to you after getting, I guess, what would be a final answer one way or the other from him, if you deem that appropriate.
Okay, Mr. Canvasser, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that. I mean, in my opinion, if there's an option for a private contractual agreement, that should always take precedent over the need for variance. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, I just don't see any path forward where this restaurant or any restaurant is going to be operating at full capacity in the near future, probably for the summer, unfortunately, if not longer. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to see you try to get a final answer. And I think whether you look at it fortunately or unfortunately, due to the pandemic, there's probably time here to be able to have those discussions without jeopardizing your ability to expand and request. But I'd probably ask you to comment on that just before we put words in your mouth, so to speak.
And well, we're happy. I think we're happy to do that. If we were there in person, I'd pull my clients aside right now and have that conversation with them. I understand the comment about there not being any urgency, but actually because we can't operate right now, this is a really good time to do the construction. So that's why we're here. And, having not received any indication from Mr. LePage, not so much it's final, but that when he would be in a position to even further discuss or consider a more formal arrangement, we made the decision to go forward at this time. Again, if you want to put this over till the next meeting, we could certainly formally, approach him again and see if that's something that he's in a position now to go forward with on a more formal basis. I can tell you though that what the current informal arrangement is working very well, and he's continues to support it and is very supportive of this project.
At least by that time we'll know what your time frame, or maybe hopefully you'll know what your time frame is for him to be able to either enter into something formally or be unable to enter into something formally.
Or hopefully we'll be able to report to you definitively one way or the other. That would be my goal.
Mr. Morgan-Roth?
Yeah, just again, I guess using the term piggyback and keeping in mind that, we're going to have to determine what we feel is self-created in terms of the expansion of the restaurant, the increased capacity, and the additional spots on the outside. And although you kind of acknowledge that some of the remodeling is not actual additional seating, increasing the capacity for the kitchen implies increased capacity. And so I think you're always best off finding a private agreement, because whatever we rezone this property for, it carries with the property and not with the owners. And we have to keep in mind, what will this be another day, and what kind of challenge and additional traffic in the area would we be encouraging or allowing, depending on how this space operates in the future.
And I appreciate those comments. Let me just indicate, though, the initial driving force for this, and I know that there will be some increased capacity. The driving force for this is really safety of the employees, particularly in the kitchen area. If you've been in the property or had the opportunity to dine there, the kitchen is open. It's extremely tight, and it's difficult, really, for particularly in this day and age with social distancing. Although that wasn't the original motivation, obviously, but it's very difficult for multiple people to be in that kitchen at the same time to even handle the existing capacity. And obviously, the age of the property, not ADA compliant, and the only way to really obviously upgrade it is to bring everything into compliance, which by definition is going to require the use of more space. And also, as I indicated earlier, the dining area itself is not going to be increased dramatically. And also, when you talk about 86 seats, that's at peak times, like a Sunday morning brunch or something like that, when probably more people would be walking up than during the week. And, you have 6 people booths, sometimes are occupied by 3 or 4. But I understand the comments. I appreciate the comments. And certainly we're willing to circle back and take another shot with Mr. LePage and then come back to you and address that issue, as well as more specifically the comments and the questions.
Okay, we can do this one of 2 ways. We can adjourn it indefinitely until you come back and say either you have an agreement or you don't have an agreement officially, or we can put you over to next month, and then if you don't have an agreement by then, you can ask for it to be postponed. So I'm giving you the option.
I think we would prefer to like put it over till next month. Still holding out hope that if we can pull this all together and get your approval, that we can get construction started in a timely fashion and get it done this construction season.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion? Mr. Canvasser?
In regards to appeal 20-20 for the property at 501 South Eden, I move to adjourn the request to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me call on somebody. So, Mr. Reddy, you were seconding it?
I would second that motion.
All right. All right. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn appeal 20-22 to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Call the roll, please.
Jason Canvasser,
Yes.
Ron Reddy,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Lilly,
Yes.
Eric Morganroth,
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay. So it's been adjourned to the next regular scheduled meeting. Board members, I would suggest you keep your papers. So not throw them away. Okay. Following 13 night time.
Zilke here to present case 20-24, property known as 1313 Lakeside. Request the following variances to construct a new single-family home. Variance A, Chapter 126, Article 2, Section 2.06.4 of the zoning ordinance requires that a maximum building height in the R1 zone district is 30 feet to the midpoint. The proposed height is 37.08 feet. Therefore, a 7.08 foot variance is being requested. Variance B, Chapter 126, Article 2, Section 2.06.4 of the zoning ordinance requires a maximum eave height in an R1 zone district is 24 feet. The proposed is 31.21 feet. Therefore, a variance of 7.21 feet is being requested. Variance C, Chapter 126, Article 4, Section 4.03A of the zoning ordinance requires that no accessory structures or structures shall be erected in the required front open space. A retaining wall is proposed to be constructed in the required front open space. Therefore, a variance to permit a retaining wall is being requested. The applicant is requesting a height variance for the portion of the proposed residence that slopes from in the front, slopes to the side, going to the north, which is going towards the Rouge River. As you can see by the circles on the site plan, that is the retaining wall in the required front yard. And if we go over to the elevation, and on the right side, you can kind of see where the lower portion on the right portion, that's where the height variance is being looked for, and the eave height to the midpoint. And with that, do you have any questions?
Yes. If this, all right, so on the drawings we have, there's this one notch in the house that's highlighted, either in orange or yellow. That's where the retaining wall is, correct?
That's the corner where it's sloping down for the height variance. When you look where the orange is at, there's a circle.
So the lot is sloping like this, right? From sort of the southwest corner to the northeast corner, and the river's down here.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
All right. So if the property was flat, no slope to it, would they need a height variance?
No, they would not.
Would they need the eave variance?
No, if it was flat, no, they would not need that either.
Okay, and I assume that, so the retaining wall is considered a structure, and what's driving that? The fact that the river's there?
The river there, and it's right close to the floodplain, and they're trying to mitigate some of the stuff that's getting into the front of the house.
Okay. Mr.
Any other
Morgenhoff.
Mr. Zelke, how are you, sir?
I'm well, yourself?
Doing well. So if these retaining walls weren't put in, would the lot be, I mean, I see, I don't know if these are all proposed grades, but I see that the back of the lot is 755 and the front of the lot is 755 at the front corner of the house. So it looks like we're fairly flat on this lot. It's what, sloping slightly towards the walkout corner that they're trying to achieve?
Correct.
But what's the actual grade difference if not for the retaining walls?
Down in the lower is 747.
Isn't that proposed?
That is actually where the floodplain line is at.
Okay.
Elevation of the floodplain. The basement in that one corner is 748, which is 1 foot above the floodplain.
Okay.
And it's going up to the 754, and it's sloping down from that point. And it's kind of swelling down to that corner. Hopefully that answers your question.
So if we didn't have the retaining walls, which would eliminate that variance requirement, and then the walkout wasn't feasible, would they need a variance at all on this property?
I would say that they still need a height variance because of the sloping in that back corner, with the floodplain being at 747 and the basement floor level being at 748. You'd still be faced with a height variance in that corner.
So what are the purpose of the retaining walls? Just to lessen the drop so it's more gradual?
Lessen the drop, lessen the impact into the floodplain, and also ease of getting into the front door.
So the walkout is somewhat natural, you're saying?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Zelke? Okay.
I guess one more question.
Yeah, Mr. Morgenroth.
Jeff, the one retaining wall not in the front yard setback, could that just be taller and to eliminate the other one, and then you wouldn't need that front retaining wall?
They're both kind of falling in the front. I think there could be some modifications to some point, but nonetheless, there still be retaining wall in the front, and there'd still be a required variance to be granted.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Zelke? Okay. Who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioners?
Hi, Kurt Kuchar.
I can hardly hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Kurt Kuchar, 1864 Park Ridge, Brighton, Michigan. Designing the home for Scott and Dana Marcus, who I believe is on here as well. I'd like to commend you. Good questions for the start for Jeff. I've been hammering him with the same questions for the last couple months, but doing my job for me. The first question you had, there's quite a bit of slope from the southwest corner to the northeast corner. As you said, there's 14 foot of slope from corner of property to corner of property. So the height variance comes into effect at the northeast portion, as you mentioned, the walls that were highlighted in orange on your sheet. That is the only area that's needed the variance for because of the slope of the property. And if I may say, we took that into consideration and created a lower roof in that area that the eave and the height would meet the ordinance, but we need to dimension it to the main roof line, which is quite a ways back from this corner of the house. So I guess I should say I know it's a clean slate of paper, but we took into consideration the slope of the land and tried to minimize the height in that area. And in that area, it's not that we're creating the walkout, it's a natural walkout. being that the floodplain at 747 is right outside that area, and we're setting our basement floor at 748, which would be 1 foot higher than the highest floodplain. So that kind of establishes where our basement needs to be. We can't go any lower. Obviously, we don't want to go any higher due to the fact of the height. So that's one practical difficulty, is we can't lower the house into the ground anymore based on the floodplain. And the second, practical difficulty, if you will, we're asking for a 7-foot variance, which in height seems like a lot, but when you held up your piece of paper and showed that slope, it's a natural slope to the Rouge River, which we're trying to maintain the topography and highlight it more or less. I think the question you had in the front retaining walls, Jeff hit it on the head. There is, again, 7 foot of slope from the edge of the driveway to the far northern side. So we're trying to create a just landscape to keep the sidewalk up, trying to eliminate a lot of steps up into the front entryway is basically what it is. To answer your question, the second wall is there, again, tastefully landscaped, so it's kind of meandering down that hill. Is the second one necessary to achieve the sidewalk? No, it's not. We could get away with one. Just know that slope is going to be a little more severe going towards the north.
Okay. Mr. Morganroth?
So if you ended that second wall and tied it into the first, so those last 5 to 6 circles were gone, would you still be in the front yard setback, Jeff? Or I can't see where the front yard setback line is.
I got you. No, you're right. Yep. No, we could keep that within, looks to be the setback. Yep.
So we could eliminate that request for a variance in the front yard setback if you combine those two retaining walls.
Yeah, we're about 7 to 8 foot area to work with before we get in the front. Yes.
Okay.
And that would achieve what we want to achieve on the height and the sidewalk. Yep.
So we could eliminate C in that scenario. The request for the structure erected in the front open space.
I think we're going to need, the problem, 753. It should work. The way we meander the sidewalk, that grade where it takes a sharp turn is 751. So it's 2 to 3 foot lower than where we're establishing our sidewalk.
Jeff, do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. I still think at some point, because you're right at that front where it's 754.5 for the front, and then it goes back towards the porch. I think still some of that retaining wall is going to be necessary just to maintain that sidewalk. So I think to eliminate it completely might be kind of difficult. I think it's
if you tied it in, if you tied that second into the first, maybe you could eliminate that portion that is in the setback, no? Or in the open space?
That second to the front, where it's coming across the front, where you see the 3 foot walk, and there's about 3 feet to the house line, there's your required front yard. You run that out, you're still gonna have a pretty drastic slope in the front.
Right.
It might be kind of, I mean, I think some of it can get designed to a certain point, but I still think a little bit might be in that front yard.
Right. Okay. That's my only questions.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to comment on this appeal? Okay, we're going to close public comment. Does someone want to make a motion? Yes, Mr. Morgenroth.
With regard to case number 20-24 for 1313 Lakeside, I move to approve appeal number 2024 A, B, and C, but I might have a C to be worked with the city to allow it, but to minimize what the open space is. Can we do that, Chairman?
Sure. Yep.
I believe that the property is unique due to the extreme drop in grade from the front to the rear. It's really unavoidable to have to need a variance for height because the grade is dropping and the house does sit within the building envelope. So they wouldn't be able to build the house that they want to build if we had strict compliance. I don't believe it's self-created. And for those reasons, I move to approve A, B, and C, C with the caveat of minimizing the variance by working with the city. And I tie this to the plans as presented.
All right, second, Mr. Rodriguez. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to grant the variances as advertised, except as to the modification of C to minimize it as much as possible with the city. Any discussion? Okay. Let's call the roll. The motion is to grant.
Eric Morgenroth,
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ron Reddy,
Yes.
Jason Canvasser,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Willie.
Yes. Okay, you have your variance.
Congratulations.
Okay, calling, this is 1124 Smith, appeal 2026.
This is Jeff Zilke again, here to present case 20-26, property known as 1124 Smith. Request the following variance to construct a new home with a detached garage. Variance A, Chapter 126, Article 2, Section 2.08 of the zoning ordinance requires a minimum front yard setback be the average of the homes within 200 feet in each direction. The required front yard setback is 22.3 feet. The proposed is 21 feet, therefore a variance of 1.3 feet is being requested. The applicant was in front of you guys back in November of 2019 for the distance between on the west side for a variance of 4 feet for the distance between structures. And with this getting closer in and realizing the required front yard, he's here asking for a variance to kind of keep the houses in line. As you can see on the, from Cummings going to the east, keeping the houses in line with the variance of the required front yard setback of 22.3 feet. A couple houses on the west side of Cummings were set back further, which took the average and would take that house and push it behind the two houses to the house to the east and the house to the north. And that's where they're asking for the variance to bring the house forward a foot to keep them kind of in line. And with that, do you have any questions?
All right, the petitioner has submitted 2 sets of drawings showing meeting the required setback and then where they want it, what he or she wants.
Correct. He's wanting to bring it up to the 21 feet, so the one.
But they also have a drawing showing that what it would be if they complied with the ordinance, correct?
Correct. He added that just to show where it was. And back in November, the variance for the distance to the house to the west, which was right at 10 foot, and there's a 4-foot variance that was granted back then for that.
We don't grant the variance. The sign with the ordinance, we got plenty of room to navigate.
Mr. Chairman, keep it close to the mic.
Yep. The drawing that shows compliance with the ordinance shows that they have sufficient room to navigate the driveway and get into the garage, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Zilke? All right. Who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
I will. Jim, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, hi. There we go. Hi, I'm Jim Verbish. I'll be speaking on behalf of Cam and Jacqueline Schilling, who are the homeowners of the house. So as Mr. Zilke said, I already did petition one time for the driveway wasn't in congruence on the street, which was granted earlier. As I got closer to building the home and I was studying the lot plans, I noticed that the house was planned to be set at 22.3 from the street. As I provided that information to you gentlemen, you all have a copy of that. But as I studied it, I noticed that the 22.3 was being calculated by all the houses on the west side of Cummings is what was driving it back. The houses on the east side of Cummings, where this house is, are on the very west house is 20.8. The house to the east is 20.4, which would create the house that I was going to build for this couple was going to be almost a foot and a half back from the two neighboring homes. And then as you continue down the east side of the street, you're 21.0 and 20.7. And I just felt, and so do the homeowners, that just to put the homes in congruence where they're all closer to the street, when these homes, a lot of homes were built, you had this like dental effect that homes were closer back. I believe the whole idea of having this average that the city has computed or has been going with during the reconstruction of many of these homes, especially in this area, was just to get everything straight and kind of leveled back off where everyone was on the same sort of playing field. And it just had like I said, just a congruency of homes down the street. So we felt we'd like to petition this home to move it up a foot, still being behind the houses on either side, but just basically putting everything in a nice even line. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's not that the house can't be built the way it's already been basically approved by the board to put the driveway in. We just would like to keep it all in a nice line. I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, well, you've indicated you can comply with the ordinance and even doing what you want, the houses aren't going to be in a line. And I took it, just handed out I got to remember to be in front of my microphone here. I took the numbers for just the east side, and that came out to 21.28. The problem is every time we give somebody a variance to come closer to the street, we're changing the average for the whole street. So everybody's creeping forward.
Okay.
Any questions for the petitioner? Go ahead.
I see exactly what you're saying, sir. But to just move it up forward a foot puts everything that much closer in line on that side of the street. And as I said, the west side of Cummings is what's creating it to go back another 1.3 feet. So if you're 21.2 over on the east side of Cummins, I mean, that's still closer than 22.3. You don't feel when you're on the street, the setback average from the west side of Cummins to the east side of Cummins when you're standing on the east side of Cummins where the house is. I'm not saying put this house any closer to the street than any of the homes, within an arm's length of it. It's just the west side of the street's what's creating, and I'm not going to use the word hardship because it's certainly not that, but it's certainly ruining the congruency of the east side.
Okay, well, we've had this issue come up before, but usually in the case where there's a house or two that's dramatically back from the rest of them, it throws the average way off. But what you're indicating, the information you give, it doesn't throw it off that much. So are there any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to comment on this appeal? Okay, we'll close public comment. Someone want to make a motion? Mr. Rodriguez.
Case 20-26. I would move to deny the variance. The practical difficulty has not been established. Among other reasons, I believe that the request for variance is self-created. In this case, the petitioner, the house could be built without the variance. So for those reasons,
All right, second, Mr. Canvasser?
Second.
All right. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to deny the requested variance. Any discussion? Okay, the motion is denied. Call the roll, please.
I'll you get a comment.
Yeah, I think Morgan Roth had a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I just want to make a comment. I just want to say that the applicant has not established any of the criteria necessary to request a variance, and it's purely his and the petitioner's clients that aesthetically believe they would like it differently than what the ordinance allows for. So it would make it impossible for us to approve this request.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you. All right, the motion is denied. To deny, call the roll, please.
Francis Rodriguez,
yes.
Jason Canvasser,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Lilly,
Yes.
Eric Morganroth,
Yes.
Ron Reddy.
Yes.
Okay, the request is denied. Okay. I'm going to call appeal. It's 1989 Webster, appeal number 2025. I'm debating whether, since they're both going to come up, we're going to cover both of them at the same time, I think. 1989, which is appeal 2025, and 1971, which is appeal 2027. Because the discussion is going to be pretty much the same on both of them, but we will vote separately on each appeal. Okay. Who's going to speak for the city on this?
This is Jeff Zilke here to present case 20-25 and 20-27. Yes, they both are basically the same request. The first one, 20-25, is asking for the distance between structures, and also same with 20-27. Chapter 126, Article 4, Section 4.74C of the zoning ordinance requires a minimum distance between principal residential buildings on adjacent lots of 14 feet or 25% of the total lot width, whichever is larger. The required distance is 14 feet. The proposed is 11 feet. Therefore, a 3-foot variance is being requested. Both on, for the first one of 1989 Webster is on the east side. They're looking for a 3-foot variance for the distance between. And with being on the corner lot, they are maintaining, since it's on the street side, they got the 10-foot required on the one side, plus the 5.5 feet. So they meet the zoning ordinance for the lot itself. And also on the other house of 1971, they meet the ordinance for the lot itself, and they pulled over to maintain a compliance with the house to the west. They held it in 10 feet because that house to the west of 1971 is actually at 4 foot to the lot line to maintain their 14 feet there. So it creates.
You lose Jeff. I can't hear him.
I can hear
me
him.
now.
I can hear. Who can't hear?
So in between the houses, I'm going to say the east and west, they're looking for a 3-foot variance on each of these properties to be able to maintain that 14 feet between. And with that, do you have any questions?
Okay, each one of these lots is 40 feet, correct?
What's that?
I say each one of these lots is has a 40-foot width.
Correct.
And because it's 60 feet or less, the minimum side yard setbacks are combined totals is 14 with 9 on one side. Correct. Why don't you pull that drawing? You want to pull that drawing back up again, Mr. Zilke? Can you get that drawing back up?
Yes. Hold on one second.
Chairman Lilly, it seems like we lost Canvasser. We should give him a minute to get back into the meeting.
Okay, sure. Well, that gives Mr. Zilke a chance to pull it back up too. Okay, Mr. Johnson, let me know when you get Mr. Canvasser back. So we'll just go on hold here for a minute to get Mr. Canvasser back.
Okay.
There he is.
Yep. Okay, we're all set?
Yes.
All right.
We're all set.
Okay. All right, set. All right, so Mr. Zilke, if you can go back to the drawing so we can take a look at it. Ready. All right. So each of these lots has a 40-foot frontage, and as I was saying, because it's 60 feet or less frontage, the combined total side yard setback has to be at a minimum 14 feet, 9 on one side, 5 on the other.
Correct.
So in the case of lot 421,
yes.
If he flipped the driveway to the opposite side of the house, then he wouldn't need a variance with lot 420, but then he'd have a problem with needing a variance with lot 422, correct?
That would be correct. Once you flip it, you can get the driveway and get your 14 feet from the corner lot to that house. And then you'd be down to a 9-foot variance. If you held it down to the 5-foot, then you'd have 9 foot on that side and would have to get a 4-foot variance from house at 1965, which would be to the west of lot 421.
Okay. So then let's go back a minute to lot 421. If there wasn't a house on 422 and there wasn't a house on 420, would the petitioner need a variance?
If there was not a house on the corner or the one next to it, no, they would comply.
All right. So then we go to lot 420. If there wasn't a house on lot 421, would lot 420 need any variances?
No, they would not.
All right. There's 2 existing houses on these lots now. What's the distance between those houses right now?
Is 5 on lot 421. That existing house is at 5.9 feet, and it is 4.8 on the corner one. So give me one. It is 10.7. So it's actually tighter than what they're looking for.
All right. So if they were to get their variances, then they would be reducing the nonconformity, correct?
Correct.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Zilke? Okay, who's going to speak? Oops, I'm sorry. Mr. Canvasser, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I think Mr. Morgenroth does.
Mr. Morgenroth?
Yeah, just curious, Jeff, that dimension towards the front of the homes, the front of the homes, the 5.9 and the 4.8 between the lot lines, what's the total width between the homes there?
That is the 10.7. Those are the existing houses.
Oh, those are the existing houses.
Correct.
But what about the distance between those 2 homes? You don't have that measurement.
The new proposed ones?
Yeah.
That would be 11 foot. They're going 5.5 and 5.5 on each of those lots.
So there's no change in the shape of the house or in the lot line that makes it any different than the 11.
No, they're straight. The other ones were kind of conscrewed a little bit on the existing lots.
Okay, that's why. Okay, just want to make sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Silke? Okay, who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner?
I will, Robert Bloomingdale.
Bloomingdale.
Yes, Robert Bloomingdale, Bloomingdale Construction.
Okay, you may proceed.
Yes, well, as you've pointed out, we've done everything we can to comply with the ordinances within the lots. It's difficult to comply between lot 421 and lot 420, but as Mr. Zilke pointed out, we did widen the driveway to the west so that we wouldn't have to ask for a variance between the existing house to the west of 421. That's about the only comment I have.
Okay, what's the width of these proposed houses?
24.6.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for Mr. Bloomingdale? Okay, Mr. Reddy?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bloomingdale, with regards to the width of the house is at 24.6. Is that sitting, it looks to the diagram that's sitting almost exactly on the foundation or the current footprint of the houses that exist there currently. Is that correct?
You know, I'm not sure, sir. I don't have an overlay like that, so I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Jeff, do you know offhand?
It appears the house on the corner, that one's 11 feet off the property line. That's off of Eaton. And 4.8. So the new proposed house is actually going in.
Just a little bit, right?
In a little bit, and actually going out, which meets the ordinance to that faces Eaton.
Thank you.
And the other one is pretty much in the same location. It's 5.9, but they're going to 5.5, and they had to go the driveway side to 10 to actually conform with the house to the east, or to the west, rather.
All right, so it's very minimal with regards to what the current footprint is, as far as the variance that he's requesting from what appears on the diagrams and the numbers you just described.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from Mr. Bloomingdale? Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this appeal? Okay, there being none, we're going to close public comment. Does someone, well, now we're going to vote on each appeal separately. So we're going to do appeal 2025, which is 1989 Webster. Someone want to make a motion? Mr. Morgan-Roth.
Regarding 1989 Webster, appeal number 28-25, regarding a variance request, chapter 126, article 4, section 4.74C, regarding distance between principal residences. The adjacent lot requires 14 feet or 25% of the total lot width, whichever is larger. The proposed is 11, therefore a 3-foot variance is being requested. I propose to grant the variance. This is a unique scenario because this particular home, I believe it's this particular home. But with this, this home in conjunction with the other variants are both impacted by the fact that this is a corner lot. The home is being built within the building envelope. So the home meets all the requirements of the ordinance. It is the distance between the homes because of the uniqueness of the corner lot that forces this home to need a variance for a distance between homes. So this is not self-created. This is particular to the site, the narrowing site due to the corner lot and the 2 front setbacks. And I think that it would do substantial justice to the applicant to grant a variance due to the uniqueness of the lot and its narrowness due to the front yard setback. So for those reasons, I would move to approve the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lilly seconded. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to grant the variances as advertised with the variance. Any discussion? I am going to support the motion because I think, well, this was the problem. We talked about the 9559 rule. Yeah, on any block, there is at least one lot that's going to run into this problem where the garage is on the wrong side. And so this is a situation we've run into quite often. Any other comments? Okay, the motion is to grant. As advertised, call the roll, please.
Eric Morgan-Roth,
Yes.
Richard Lilly,
Yes.
Charles Lilly,
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ron Reddy,
Yes.
Jason Cavison.
Yes.
All right. So appeal 2025 has been approved. We're now going to go to appeal 2027-1971 Webster. Someone want to make a motion? Mr. Reddy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, with regards to Appeal 20-27 for the property known as 1971 Webster, with regards to the variance request set forth in paragraph A, I would move to grant this variance based on prior discussion that we've had, that the actual approving the variance on the lot on the right affects this property as well. It's again a unique property. The actual building that's being constructed fits within the envelope of the prior structure that's there currently. And for those reasons, the fact that this is kind of a unique property, as you've already alluded to, Mr. Chairman, I would move to grant this variance.
Is there a second? Mr. Canvasser.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to grant the variance as advertised. Any discussion? I would say, I would support this motion again because we have the issue of the 9559. One lot's going to be penalized. At least one lot's going to be penalized on the block, and then also in this case, the petitioner is reducing the nonconformity between the houses on those two lots. Mr. Morganroth?
Just would like to add that I think we should tie it to the plans as submitted.
Okay, yep. Any other comments? Okay, the motion is to grant. Call the roll, please.
I believe Laura got dropped off for a minute, so we're trying to get her back in.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, are you allowed to call the roll?
Yeah, we almost got away with it.
Someone's coming in with just a phone number. Very well could be Laura.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Laura.
Hello. The internet went out at my home, so
Okay.
I'm calling in.
All right, so we're calling the roll now for appeal 2027-1971.
And who made the first and the second?
So Mr. Reddy made the motion and it was seconded by Mr. Canvasser.
Perfect.
And we added that it was tied to the plans as submitted.
And Mr. Morganroth added it was tied to the plans as presented.
Perfect. Okay. Ron Reddy.
Yes.
Jason Canvasser.
Yes.
Richard Willie.
Yes.
Charles Willie.
Yes.
Eric Morganroth.
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So the motion has also been granted for the appeal for 2027 has also been granted. Okay, Mr. Johnson, do we have any general business to discuss at this point?
We do not.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public who would like to discuss any matter that has not been heard tonight? Okay, I hear nothing or see no raised hands. So does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Morganroth, motions to adjourn. Mr. Rodriguez seconded. All right. The motion is to adjourn. Call the roll, please.
Eric Morganroth.
Yes.
Francis Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ron Reddy.
Yes.
Jason Canvasser.
Yes.
Richard Willie.
Yes.
Charles Willie.
Yes. The meeting is adjourned.
Evening.